Well, hey, everybody. Getting ready to record episode 220 of Mike in the Midwest for our patrons. Oops, let me grab a soda. Just finish this one. All right. Let's do this. Well, hey, everybody. Welcome to episode number 220 of Mike in the Midwest, our mini podcast for the amazing patrons just like you of the Be Our Guest podcast. Of course, my name is Mike Rallman, host of the Be Our Guest podcast. You can find in all the places that you can find any kind of podcasts. I get mine on Pocket Casts is where I listen to all my shows, but you can get us on Apple Podcasts or, basically anywhere. Just search for the Be Our Guest podcast online. But you're a patron, you know that. We don't need to spend time on that. You can find me, though, at Be Our Guest Mike, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, all the places. But of course, come on over to the Clubhouse. That's where you'll find me. BeOurGuestPodcast.com/Clubhouse. All right, that's all out of the way. Let's have some fun for the next 30 minutes or so. We're recording this show on October 13th, 2024, Sunday morning. It is a beautiful Sunday here in mid-America in St. Charles County, Missouri, Weldon Spring, Missouri, St. Peters, Missouri. We're right in the corner of three little municipalities. We're actually mailing address St. Peters, Missouri, but we're closer to Weldon Spring, Missouri. It's confusing, but it's a beautiful place. And if you look at my Instagram this morning, that's where you're going to get the inspiration for today's topic here in just a few minutes. It's not the picture of me, it's the second picture that shows some beautiful leaves this time of year here in Missouri. That's going to be what we're talking about. We're going to talk about transitions in just a few minutes. So stand by for that. But until then, hope you're having a great week. What have you been up to? This is a great time of the year. We got all kinds of stuff. You got the postseason baseball happening. I know a lot of folks are happy with that. We have hockey season. Dennis, I know he's a big hockey fan. We got hockey starting. The Blues off to a good start. Holy cow, that's great to see. Of course, football is in full swing. College football. Wow, we've had a couple of big weekends here. Man, some overtime games last night in the SEC. Of course, we had Ohio State and Oregon going down to a 1-point game at the very end. Whew. College football always delivers. NFL's going hot and heavy. Again, we have a game going on right now on a Sunday morning over in Europe. The Bears in Jacksonville here in the studio as I get to record. I mean, it's a great time of the year if you're a sports fan. If you're not a sports fan, it's a great time of the year. The weather has been amazing in most parts of the world. I mean, right now, 62 degrees and sunny outside. The leaves are looking beautiful. You're a leaf peeper. I bet y'all are friends up in the Northeast, Brandon and all of our friends, New Hampshire, Maine. We got a lot of friends up in Nova Scotia. Holy cow, I bet it looks gorgeous up that way. But wherever you are, I hope you're doing well. And I wanted to spend some time this morning to talk about Florida because we spent some time. And again, we're still thinking about our friends in the Carolinas from Helene, and we're still praying for you. I promise you, we're still praying for your recovery for all your communities because we know that's not going to be just days and weeks. That's going to be months in Appalachia. Still praying for your recovery there. But of course, Milton came ashore this past week, Wednesday. And we're thinking about you down in Florida because we know a lot of devastation was happening down there. And it is something where when you have friends that are in harm's way, we were praying hard for Teresa and Phil and Kim and Abby. Abby was down there working for the first time down at Walt Disney World. Kim, of course, is a cast member at Walt Disney World. Teresa and Phil live there. Jay and Melissa live right behind the Magic Kingdom. We have so many friends down in Central Florida now that when these storms move through, Jeff is in the Tampa area. It's one of those things. And if I missed your name, it's unintentional. It's just we have so many friends at this point that do live down there that these storms, when 20 years ago, I used to worry about when you'd hear about hurricanes, and you guys probably know because my life here on Mike in the Midwest is an open book. That's what this show is supposed to be about. It's so you can get to know a little bit more about me. And I've always been somebody who's definitely into science. I was a science teacher. I love space and I love weather. One of the jobs I would have loved to have had was a meteorologist. I've loved to have studied weather, science, weather science, and worked on TV and stuff like that. But um hurricanes, super interesting to me how they form because they're kind of the polar opposite of where I live, which is tornadoes. Hurricanes are like tornadoes, but on a massive scale. But tornadoes kind of pop out of nowhere. Where I'm from, you get this couple of seconds warning, the tornado sirens go off, woo, 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 and you get maybe 5-10 minutes warning. You head to the basement. It's very acute where it's going to hit. It might hit a certain part of a subdivision. It's very tight where it hits. It might hit a house in a subdivision, a couple houses, and miss most of the subdivision. It's very, very tight to where it hits. It's a straight line. Where a hurricane will devastate, you know, an entire. We've seen it, right? I mean, that path Helene made, and you can see it from space. It's horrible. It goes just hundreds of miles, the devastation path. And you see hurricanes form days in advance, almost a week in advance. You see it from just a few clouds, and then you see it start to kind of circulate. And then you see, oh, it's starting to organize, and you start to see what that could become an eye. And then you start to see an eye with the circulation around it. It becomes a tropical depression and so forth, and it grows into a tropical, system, and then category 1 and the formation of a storm. And all that used to be super interesting. It still is to me, but it has taken on a whole new feeling. There's a new perspective to it when I know on the other end, as it moves towards the peninsula of Florida, that I have friends that I absolutely consider family that are in harm's way. When I know that's going to move over Central Florida, and I have people that I truly care about that are going to be experiencing, and they say 70-mile-an-hour winds, 80-mile-an-hour winds, 100-mile-an-hour sustained winds overnight that could lose power for a week. Tornadoes could be spawned. That scares me, to where it used to be one of those things I would geek out on all those numbers and say, oh, that's pretty cool. I mean, I was down there during Hurricane Charlie, and I thought that was cool at the time in 2004. I guess because I'm getting older, I think when you get older, you start to have a different perspective on things. But I'm still definitely one of those people who is in awe of nature. And I'll talk about that here again in just a second. But I'm just glad that it seems like, for the most part, people heeded the warnings of the National Weather Service, and that there was a lot of physical damage by Milton, but it seems like everybody stayed relatively safe. So I'm very thankful for that. And I'm thankful that I have so many friends down there that were able to escape harm and that made it through Milton. So glad to see that. And let's hope that was the last one of the year. Probably not, but I hope it was. And we can move on and have some Halloween here in a couple of weeks, and move on to Thanksgiving and have lots to be thankful for. And, the Christmas season, and have that, and the holiday season. And also a Happy New Year to all of our Jewish friends out there that were celebrating this past couple of weeks, because I know that was a rough time as well with all the happenings with that too. So just want to shout out all of our friends and say that I'm glad you're safe, because we're thinking about you very much with Milton and Helene, because we have so many friends up in the Carolinas too. All right. So what else has been going on around here? Of course, around here, it's football in the Rallman household. And we've been going to high school football games. We've been doing all right. It's an okay season. In 2022, our Howell football team, undefeated, state champions, rolled, didn't ever lose a game. It was awesome. Last year, not so much. We got knocked out in the quarterfinals of the state championships. We were rolling till we lost to the eventual state champions on a 2-point conversion. Tough pill to swallow, but it happens. This year, young team struggling, but we're winning here and there. We're about 500. So we're just kind of enjoying the ride. But we had a big win on Friday night. So that was fun. Mizzou won yesterday. So that was good. Bama almost lost to South Carolina, but they pulled it out in the end. Heart attack, but they won. So it's been a pretty good weekend. Can't complain. Mallory's at work right now. So she has 2 jobs. So she's working at a restaurant out in the country, about 20 miles out if you're from St. Louis, in a place called New Melly, out in kind of out in the sticks, but it's right on what's called the Katy Trail, which if you ever come to St. Louis, there's this in other places I've heard people call it like a rails to trail, where there was this railroad track that went all the way across the state of Missouri. It went from all the way from Kansas City to St. Louis, all the way across the state. And no longer do they use it. So they turned it into they reclaimed the railroad right away, and they took out the railroad tracks and they turned it into a state park. I mean, it's not really a park, but it's owned by the state park system. And they turned it into basically a running and a walking path. And it's called the Katy Trail State Park. And so you can now run or walk this path, and there's bicycle it. It's really smooth, and it's right along the Missouri River. So it's beautiful, especially this time of the year. And so all these little towns that are on the Missouri River bluffs, small towns, maybe 200-300 people live in these small towns. Once you get outside of like where we live, about 20 miles out, Defiance, New Melly, Washington. Sorry, I'm trying not to sneeze. I just came in from outside and have allergies. But they have these, there'll be like a restaurant or two along there's a road out there called Highway 94, Missouri State 94, which is what we live on 94 too. But once you go out there, it's just a 2-lane road, and it's beautiful this time of year. I mean, there's all kinds of, it's a winding little highway, state highway, with beautiful trees and hills. There's wineries out there. There's a town called Augusta with lots of Missouri. You wouldn't think we have wineries in Missouri, and they're really good. But anyway, Mallory works at a little restaurant out there now, and she also works at a boutique, but she's out there working today. So it'll be busy because a lot of people stop off at the restaurant there. There's a lot of bikers, motorcyclists that ride out that way. So they'll stop in and have lunch, watch football, and the bicyclists and the people on the Katy Trail stop in. So she's out there working. And that'll kind of be a part of today's topic too here in just a second. But that's kind of what we're doing around here. A little football. Next week we go back to Mizzou. We have another home game against Auburn, so that'll be fun. Shout out Abby and her family. Trisha, we'll be playing Auburn. We need that W against Auburn this week, and then we go to Alabama. Got to take on the state of Alabama the next 2 weeks. MIZ. We'll see how that goes. So hopefully wherever you are, you're having a great week. And we have some big shows coming up. This week it should be Ricky, Scott, and I on the podcast. Pam is going to be at a conference down at Walt Disney World. Hopefully the weather holds out and everything is back to normal. Knock on wood this week. Because this last week, I will tell you, I am exhausted from Milton and all the stress it caused. And I know if you had to travel this week, it caused you much stress, but travel agents, I'll tell you what, hurricane season causes lots of sleepless nights. But that's just part of our job. I mean, it's not a big deal, but that's the reality of it. Just trying to get everybody where they need to be and helping your guests have peace of mind. Because we've been through hurricane seasons many times, but guests have not. That's kind of our role. This is what we do in September and October every year. As travel agents, we go through the ringer in every hurricane season. So we have experience with it. Where if you travel in October, likely you've never gone through this experience before. So you can kind of lean on us to say, here's kind of what probably will happen. And we can give you perspective. I think that's kind of what an advantage of having a travel agent can give you, is that we don't necessarily 100% know exactly what's going to happen, because nobody does, but we can say, we've seen this before. And this is probably what will happen, and we can give you perspective. So but I mean, we have to go through the ringer with you, because all we want you to do is have a great trip. But we can't predict when the storm's going to come in, when Orlando Airport's going to close or reopen, so you can get your flight. we can guess, we can give you our perspective because we've been there, but yeah, it wears us out mentally too because we just want you to have a great trip. I just because we've been right with you for 9 months too. We want you to get there. We want you to go to Chef Mickey's. We want you to meet Donald Duck. We want you to ride Seven Dwarfs Mine Train and all that stuff, but it's stressful. We want you to get on the Disney Fantasy just like you've been planning for 18 months. But sometimes it's out of our control. So it's been a week. All right, let's hit the feedback from last week's show. Last week we talked about the anticipation of fall, how I like looking forward to fall. Summer's great and all. Like you get to have, as a kid, you're off in the summertime. As a teacher, I was off in the summertime. Summertime's great. You get, weather's awesome. It's hot. You got baseball season. Everybody's kind of chill. It's just everybody's happy in the summer. But then fall, it's transitional time, which we're going to talk about transitions today. But we had a little feedback. Tricia, and we talked about also kind of a secondary topic, how the cheerleading squad was doing this little cheer clinic at our high school where the varsity cheerleaders last Sunday were doing this clinic where the little girls in our community, 175 little girls, came out and kind of learned from the varsity cheerleaders this, all these little techniques of cheerleading. And then Monday they got to go do a little performance at the JV game at halftime in front of the crowd and all that stuff. And it went off without a hitch. It was great. Everybody loved it. And actually, one of the cool things they did this year that was new, that was super cool, was that for another, because this was a big fundraiser for our cheerleaders, was that they raffled off, and is kind of like what we did here on the Be Our Guest podcast for the 6-hour live show, Give Kids the World. They raffled off 5 slots. They called them Friday Night Experience. So they sold chances to where 5 little girls could win an opportunity to be with our cheerleaders this past Friday night for the whole shindig. So you could buy, I think it was like $20. You could buy a chance for your little girl to get to be with our cheerleaders for the whole Friday night experience. So every Friday after school, our cheerleaders stay after school, and they all get all dolled up together. They go into the locker room, they bring their makeup and their hairspray and all that stuff. And then in the community, this is probably how your high school does it too. We have businesses that donate the Friday night meal for the football team and the cheerleaders, right? So like B Halls or Brass Rail, all these big businesses will bring in and cater dinner for the cheerleaders and for the football team. So there'll be, like wings, and Texas Roadhouse will bring it in or whatever. So I'll have the rolls, the whatever, all the food. Looks like a wedding reception. So they'll be in the cafeteria, they'll have all the food, they'll have all the desserts. And so after they get dressed, they'll go have their pregame meal, then they'll practice their routines and stuff like that, and then they'll get ready for the game at 6:30. So what they did was they raffled off 5 little girls, got to have after the girls got ready, they got to meet for the pregame meal with our girls, and they got to have the pregame meal with the cheer squad. And then they got to go warm up with the girls, and they got to be with them through the pregame, and they got to go with them on the field as they held the banner, as the football team ran out on the field and busted through the banner before the game, and got to sit with them through halftime. Like they got to sit on the fence as the girls cheered the first half on the track. And I mean, these girls were beaming. They were so cool. So it was just cool to see, like, little kindergarten girls. I don't even think they were kindergarten. They're little girls, but they had their little bows and their shirts they got at the clinic. It was a cool thing. So they do look up to them. And so that kind of went with what Trisha was saying. So Trisha's feedback from last week's show says, my kiddo is a bit young to feel like a role model, even though I see it in her interactions with her swim teammates. I had an impact on my younger brother. He actually admitted it. I had that N on my Letterman's jacket too. I was a really good student, graduating in the top 10 in my class of over 350 students. Meanwhile, my brother was messing around in middle school, getting average grades, and generally disengaged in school. When I accepted early admission to UW-Madison, my brother sobered up and changed his academic life around. He now has a PhD in pharmaceutical engineering and is working towards a career as a college professor. Who knows? Acting as a role model now could set the next generation down the path of becoming president or winning a Nobel Award. I agree. And here's the other thing. Your brother is a perfect example of you don't have to the kids who get the straight A's in elementary school, middle school, high school aren't necessarily going to be the ones who conquer the world later. A light switch can go off in college and you don't and I truly believe in this more and more as I get older that college not isn't and as a teacher, when I was a younger teacher, my first 5 or 6, 7, 10 years of being an elementary school teacher, I wanted every one of my kids to go to college. That was my 100% goal. Everybody should go to college and get a degree. I've kind of changed my thoughts on that. I think a lot of people should go to college if that's possible. This is a total tangent here, but there's so much honor in pursuing a trade, being a hard worker. There's nothing wrong with being a mechanic or a plumber or somebody who, like my parents, my dad and my grandpa were cement masons. And I think nowadays there's such a demand for people that go to work and do manual labor, skilled labor in a trade. Because here's the thing, a lot of people are not willing to do that kind of a job. And there's so few people that know how to do things like fix cars that you are so in demand that you're going to make a ton of money. And so I don't know if you have to go to college and get a 4-year degree anymore. Now, here's the question. Would I tell that to Mallory? Because Mallory's a junior in high school. Do I want her to go to college? Yes, I do want her to go to college and have that safety net of a bachelor's degree at least. I do. But do I think it is 100% necessary? If you're a hard worker and willing to pursue a trade and work really hard as a blue collar trade worker with a skill, I don't necessarily. That's an interesting question. Let me know what you think about that. Patreon.com/BRGS podcast. I've wrestled with that for 10 years because I think fewer and fewer people are willing to do the trades. And I think that makes you more and more in demand and more willing to name your price. For example, my wife's hairdresser owns her own hairdressing studio. And the amount she gets for like doing hair at the hair studio is outrageous. Does not have a college degree. And she's outstanding at what she does. Now you have to be good at what you do. You have to hustle. You have to be creative. You have to work hard. Here's the thing. I don't think there's correlation between smart and having a college degree. I think college degree is just checking off a bunch of boxes and playing the game. And I'm somebody who has a master's degree. Plus, I have a lot of other college credits beyond a master's. And that was just a matter of doing what was expected, playing the game, checking off boxes, and getting the degree, right? So that I could because in education, if you get a bachelor's degree, you're on a certain pay scale as a teacher. If you get a master's degree, you move up on the pay scale doing the exact same job. If you get a master's plus 30 plus hours, you get even more money as a teacher doing the exact same job as the person next door that has a bachelor's degree. You're doing the same job, but you're getting paid a lot more because you have more college credits. So that's kind of how you win as a teacher. So I played the game. I don't think that necessarily makes you smarter. It gives you more knowledge base. But I think that smart people can figure things out because you're practical. You're a problem solver. I don't know. So anyway, that's maybe another story for another day. Today's topic, though, let's get to today's topic because we're going long already. Transitions. A lot of you guys know me that I get up every morning at before 5 a.m. and I start every day with either a run or a walk. I run 4 days a week. I run on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. And I walk on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Sundays. In the last few months or so, because my wife and my doctors have told me I'm low on, you should get outside instead of just walking on the treadmill. So I said, or they told me I should run outside. And I'm like, nah, I like running on the treadmill. So I said, I'll walk outside. So I've been walking outside since I've had all this anemia issues and stuff. So I walk around our lake and I walk my 8 miles on those 3 days. And so our lake is a quarter mile around. So I do 32 laps around our lake on those 3 days a week. And so in doing that, you see the same things 32 times. And this morning I'm always thinking, right? Because I go out there at 5 a.m, pitch dark. But by the time I finish, it's light outside. So there's your first transition we're going to talk about, from darkness to light, from night to day. But I'm always thinking about, like, okay, what's my day going to I think it's a great thing for everybody to do. You don't have to do it as long as I do. It takes over 2 hours to do that walk. But it gives me time, and I'm always listening to podcasts as I'm doing this. I'm not doing this in silence. That'd be crazy. But I'm listening to podcasts, but I'm also processing, how's my day going to unfold? What do I need to accomplish today? What did I accomplish yesterday? What can I do better today than I did yesterday? I think that time is super important. But it also can get in your head, like, you can think about a lot of things, and I do. But I also try to really focus on what do I need to do today, and like long-term goals too. So while I'm walking, because I'm more at peace when I'm walking than when I'm running, but you also think about a lot when you're running too. Running does the same thing. But today I was thinking, okay, I got Mike in the Midwest. It's Sunday. What can I think about? So I'm just kind of letting the world come to me. It's Sunday morning, easy like a Sunday morning, like the song. And as I'm walking around, right, it's a beautiful Sunday morning. It's dark, but then the sun breaks, and I always take my sunrise picture for you and post it on Instagram. And I'm walking past this one tree 32 times, right? I'm walking past a bunch of trees 32 times because there's a lot of trees on our path by our lake. But there's this one tree that just kept catching my eye. And I saw these leaves. So look at my Instagram at Be Our Guest Mike. It's the second picture. And I was like, that tree is telling today's story for Mike in the Midwest. And it's the leaves. The leaves on this tree. And it's perfect for this time of the year because the leaves are transitional right now. The leaves themselves on this tree are half red and half green. If you pick one of the leaves off this tree, they're in transition. Each leaf, almost to the entire tree. I looked at the entire tree, but if you look at this picture, I tried to take a good chunk of it. And I'm not a great photographer, but I tried to be artistic. I try. But it's like each leaf was telling its own story of transition. That each leaf was partially in fall and partially in summer still. Like it was trying to go between the two seasons. And, there's still chlorophyll in there, but part of it had died off and kind of given up the ghost and moved on to, well, the season's over. We're going to go dormant until next year. And it's made the switch. And it made such a beautiful picture. And it made such a beautiful leaf. Each one of them did, because they were in different states of transition too. Some of them were 50-50. Some of them were 60-40. Some of them were 70-30. It's a beautiful picture. And it's just a snapshot. But think about all the transitions we go through daily. Like I said, on my walk, I go from pitch dark. When I go out there in the morning, it's beautiful because it's just silent. It's just dark. I look up in the sky, I see the Orion constellation. I see the Big Dipper. I see the North Star. I get to see that. But then, 30 minutes later, I start to see some blues and pinks on the horizon, that first color of daybreak. And then I get to see the sun eventually peek up across the sun, the first peaks of those sun rays. And to see that, it's good for the soul. We talk about it on cruises. It's awesome. You need to see a sunrise on a cruise and a sunset. But I see that 3 times a week when I'm on my walks. So when the doctor said I need to get outside and maybe get outside and run, maybe it wasn't physically, maybe it was emotionally, spiritually. I don't know. Because it is good to see that. It makes me feel like renewed every day when I get to see the sunrise. That transition's good. But I was thinking about transitions in life that come at you that you don't expect, right? I mean, I was defined as a baseball player when it came to being like my athletics. I was a pitcher. I was, played baseball all through little league and in middle school, high school. That's all I did. And then in college, I wanted to go back and try something different. I tried speed skating, totally 180. And I wasn't that great at it because I had asthma and it was like a really, really, really hard thing. Baseball came so naturally to me as a tall left-handed pitcher, super naturally. Speed skating was super hard, but I liked it because it was super hard. And I embraced it because when I was doing in my prime, when I was trying to make the national team, I was practicing 6 nights a week, and 2 of those nights twice a day. 2 nights, twice 2 times on that night. I practice at 6, and then I go practice at another rink at 10 that night in college because I had the time to do that. And then so I was transitioning from baseball to a whole nother sport, and I learned so much about myself in that transition that it when a sport doesn't come naturally to you, you really gotta love the sport. You gotta invest way more to something when it doesn't come naturally to you. And then when I was speed skating, some guys came over and asked me if I'd play hockey because I was fast. I was a fast skater. I knew nothing about playing hockey. So then I had to learn, I had to transition into a whole nother sport where different kinds of skates, I had all this gear on. Now I was pretty good at shooting the puck because again, I was a baseball player. So I was kind of had a natural like knack for hitting things. Like I was a good hitter, but shooting a hockey puck was kind of a different thing. And skating was natural, but I had to learn strategy and, they put me up on the power, but it was fun because I love the team aspect of it again. Because speed skating was kind of solo and I went back to a team sport. So the transition there was super exciting. I was back on a team and it was a very physical game. I love that, like getting hit and hitting people. Like I loved hockey. Like it was so exciting. I was really into it. And that was a huge transition for me because I got to take it was almost like taking baseball and speed skating and like mashing them into a grinder. And you got to take your aggression out. You got to smoke people. And even though roller hockey it wasn't supposed to be a physical sport, it was. And it was exciting. In that year that I was doing it at a high level, we went to nationals. I went to nationals in speed skating and in roller hockey in the same year. And it was a super high 1996, 97. It was awesome. But it was transitional because I was always known as a baseball player. And all of a sudden I was not playing baseball. I was on skates 24/7. And it was so different than anything else I knew. But the whole thing was I had to work so hard at it because with baseball, I didn't practice that much. I would just go out there and pitch, and I was not I mean, I was pretty good, and I could have been a lot better if I would have worked as hard as I did with skating. So transitions, it lit a fire under me because I loved it. Another transition in my life was when I went from teaching to what I do now. Like I started the podcast. I remember like I listened to podcasts when Pam gave me an iPod for Christmas or my birthday. It was back in like 2003 or 4 when iPods first came out, and I didn't want to listen to music because I'd spent so much time working as a DJ, and that's all I did was listen to music. I got paid to play music, and I'm like, oh, last thing I want to do is listen to music in my free time. But I found podcasts, and I'm like, these things are free, and they come out, and you can just subscribe to them, and you get more and more for free. That's a good deal. And then, of course, I worked as a DJ and I always listened to talk radio. I was a nerd. And so I thought I'd like to try to make a podcast. And I was a guest on WDW Today back in the day with Mike and Matt and Len and the guys. And so I remember I still remember talking to Pam over spring break. I said, I'm going to start a podcast. I'm going to try this. Because I had the gear. My dad was a radio guy. I could figure the gear out. My dad had plenty of extra gear. And we started it over spring break. And we've been going ever since. Haven't missed an episode, knock on wood, since March of 2008. And it's one of those things that we were doing this while I was teaching, but eventually I got to just not teach, and I left teaching, and I transitioned from teaching to working in travel, and that was a 180 because I was known as Mr. Rallman. And when I walked out in 2017 and left the classroom and was no longer Mr. Rallman, that was probably one of the biggest transitions in my life because I'll be honest, I love being Mr. Rallman. I loved being Mr. Rallman in room 135 because that was in the community. I mean, people knew me, and Ms. Bullington was next door and Mrs. Rallman after we got married. We were next door to each other. And it was kind of our identity. And it was hard to leave that. It was hard to make that transition. And then I moved over to and taught gifted education at the Gifted Center. And we did some cool stuff. I mean, because I was always one that I was never satisfied with what I did, like just teaching a curriculum. I remember, we'd always do different projects. We made arcade games out of cardboard stuff. Um, we did fundraisers. We bought Wii's, Nintendo Wii's, and we took them to the senior centers in our communities and donated them to the senior centers. But we didn't just donate them. I would take my kids over on buses and we would teach the older folks how to play this was back in like 2009 when the Wii was popular. We'd teach the old folks how to play the Wii. So we'd take my kids over, my sixth graders, and we bowl with them. We had a bowling league going in one of the places with them. My sixth graders would bowl against the old folks. We'd go over like every Wednesday and bowl against them. It was the coolest thing ever. These 90-year-olds are bowling against my like 10-year-olds. And they're talking about the old days and stuff. It was the greatest thing ever. They're in their wheelchairs bowling and my kids are bowling and they're talking. To leave that to just stay at home. There's so many great things about what I do now. I get to talk to people everywhere around the world. I love what I do. What I get to do is such a blessing, but to walk away and make that transition was super hard because I walked away from those moments. Like that was super cool. So transitions are blessings because I would not change what I have right now. I'm living the dream. I mean, I have friends in Australia and Japan and all over this country. And I never would have thought that I get to pretend that I'm like a radio person, which I'm not, but I mean, this is as close as I'm ever going to get. I'm living my dream when I get to do Mike in the Midwest and the Be Our Guest podcast. Oh my gosh, this is it. If you would have told 12-year-old Mike Rallman what I'm doing right now and what I have, look at this. I have like basically a radio studio. I mean, I can ring a bell on my soundboard. This is the best. I'm living the dream. But to transition away from like my other dream of being a teacher, I've lived so many dreams, but I think that's the lesson in all this, right? Is that you can't be scared to make transitions because if you'd have told me back in 2006, 2004, like, because I would have told you I'm living the dream as a teacher. Are you ever going to transition out of that? I'd have said, no way, this is it. And so to make that transition to what I'm doing today, I'd have been scared to, but I'm living the dream now. And like I was happy then, but then I transitioned into being a stepdad. And I'll tell you what, being a dad is the best thing I've ever gotten to do because I got to be a stepdad first with Paige. And that's the greatest thing ever. I'm so glad that she accepted me to be her stepdad because, I came into her life when she was 3, 4 years old and she loved me just like anything. And she's the best thing ever. And I'm so lucky to have her as a daughter. And then Mallory's my baby. And all of a sudden she's 16. I'll tell you what, this is the kind of the final thing. I've been thinking about this a lot. Mallory turned 16 this past January, and then we got her a car a couple days later for her 16th birthday. And getting back to her jobs, she has 2 jobs. So she works at, like I said, that restaurant out in New Melly, and she also works at a boutique, a women's boutique, like a little shop. And she's a varsity cheerleader. So ever since she's had that car, she's not home a whole lot because she's working 2 jobs and she's, cheerleading practice and games and so forth. And so what we've realized since January is that she's not home a whole lot. And we understand that this is not going to change as she goes away and we're looking at colleges and she's looking at, a lot of SEC schools, maybe Ole Miss, maybe Alabama, maybe Mizzou, probably Mizzou. Is that, Paige is gone. She's in Chicago and she's not coming back. She's 27. She's living her life. And that, Mallory's going to be gone soon. She got her senior year next year. We're going to enjoy the heck out of that. But I mean, then it's going to, and Scott and I have talked about this many times, is that, we're going to be empty nesters. And I still feel like I'm 25. I honest to God still feel like I'm 25 on the inside. We're going to be empty nesters here, make that big transition soon. And it breaks my heart. It does, because the best thing in the world, I just want to be a dad. And I'll always be a dad. But to not have the girls here, whew. But I know that I've heard lots of songs that, you get to go and have adventures with your wife, right? You get to travel more. You get to have freedom. And with my job, I can, because I can work from anywhere. There's an internet connection. I can even do the podcast from anywhere, really, with technology nowadays. And again, I was scared of transitions back then. I would have been scared to leave teaching to do what I do now, and it turned into be a blessing. So I just got to listen to my own advice. But yeah, transitions, man. That leaf. Think about that leaf. Look at that picture. It was half in the summer and half in the fall, but it was beautiful. It was beautiful, right? So transitions, they can be hard, and they can be kind of still half and half. They can have one foot in the door, one foot out the door, but it could be beautiful at the same time. So let me know, what transitions are you going through? What do you think about transitions? And give me your feedback on today's show. But either way, don't be scared of them, because they can be the best thing in your life. All right, patreon.com/BeOurGuestPodcast. Hope you're having a great week. Thanks so much for your support. Live show tonight. Give us a call. We're going to be talking Disney, but hope you're having a great week. All right, till then, stay safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you real soon.